This week on SV Links. Welcome to another SV Links video. This week we are going to try and get the motor mounts for our Nanny diesel engine into the starboard hull.
And we're hoping to get it completely finished. Now we're pretty sure we're probably not going to get to lower the engine in, simply because even if we do manage to get all the way to the point where it's glassed in, we need to give it a few days to set up and get the epoxy harder. But we will try to at least get the motor mounts in completely and get the walkways on either side in and all that good stuff. And if we achieve that, we'll be happy enough. So Brian and I are going to get started on that work, and by the end of the week, our buddy Terry's going to help out a little bit as well. So off we go. We're getting ready to epoxy our lower blocks down. This is the one with a 5-degree angle on it. And to make sure we can reline these back up again, we drew a reference line that we can line up here and then mark them B1 through 7 so we can make sure they're in the right order, and A1 through 7 on this one. Because the bottom of these is stair steps, so we only have one flat top and side, so that'll help us get it aligned properly. And we're mixing up, well, Brian is mixing up a thickened epoxy, but not very thick. This is more like a honey. The idea here is that we're going to coat these, let it absorb in a little bit, and coat it again if necessary. And then with the honey consistency, if there's any little tiny gaps in wood grain, it'll fill that in. So I'm just going to take some of this semi-thickened epoxy in here. This isn't very thick. And we'll just coat this. It's cool enough right now that we're not in a terrible hurry. So a little bit easier than the first ones, which was much warmer than this when we did the first block. So here we have a little more time to get our cameras rolling, for example. There we go. That's a nice coat on there. We'll let that absorb for a bit. And the next piece that goes on is right here. So I can coat that one as well. And just get it all set. So the difference with working with wood, when we're, instead of the panels of foam with layers of fiberglass already on them, is that wood absorbs your epoxy. And so you got to make sure you have plenty on there and let it absorb a little bit before we mate these up. But with this thickened, I don't see that we're going to probably have too much trouble here. I'll let this percolate for a couple minutes here. Make sure this is still very, very wet looking on top, not dry from where it sucked into the wood grain. We'll be back. Okay, it's been a few minutes and this is still all wet out looking, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this over onto the other one over here. Now, I'm not worried about alignment yet. Just making sure that this is pressed down so we get a little squeeze out along the edge here, which we do. Okay. Now this shouldn't set up so fast that we're worried about readjusting this in a couple minutes. So we should be able to get all these boards on there and still readjust a little bit. But just in case I'm wrong, I am lining it up right now. What Brian doing here is we're just taking the squeeze out and we're just filling these stair steps now. Doesn't have to be perfect. We can sand it. We'll have to sand it anyway, roughen it up. So, but this will fill in, since we have the epoxy already, this will fill in some of these stair steps now, and we won't have to use as much additional mixing later on. All right, we finished the second one. We just got to clamp it and get it aligned. So we've got a square and we've got it aligned, and our line safety marker looks good. So we're going to put some clamps on here to hold it now. And we've already filled in the stair step on both of these. Now we'll have to sand that and put more epoxy on when we glue it to the boat, but at least we won't have to fill all of it. And there we go. Let it sit and cure. I say that and I touch it one more time. But it looks good. So we'll let these cure up, and then we're ready to bond the blocks into the hull next, once this is cured. Now that's probably going to take most of today, if not till tomorrow. We'll see. But that's okay, because we got other things to do. Lots. There's only, 500 some panels left to glue on, so I don't want to scare myself saying that, but there are. So while we're letting these blocks set up that we just did this morning, obviously we can't put them in to the hull, and we got to let them set up a bit. So there are always more jobs to do. So what we're doing right now is up at the bow, we've glued in all of the small bulkheads that go in one hull, but we haven't tabbed all of them yet. In fact, there's about 7 bulkheads that still need tabbing. So what we're doing right now is we're going to do one of the bulkheads before lunch here. And these aren't critical that we get these done right now, but anytime that we're waiting on something else that's setting up or whatever, then we just go do one of these tabs on the bulkheads. And eventually, of course, they'll all be done. But it's one of those things where we can just do it any time that we're waiting. So this is a good one. So we've dry fitted the 2 blocks here for the engine mounts, and we put the combi bracket in on the motor mounts. Now these motor mounts were set up in their position by attaching them to the engine. And so we put this all in here to make sure everything worked, and it's a good thing we did, because when we put the combi bracket in here, it didn't fit between these two, although it fit fine between those two. And what we discovered is that the engine has a slot here for adjustment, but the combi bracket did not. And so that's what caused the problem. So we've put the same slot into the combi bracket now, and now everything fits properly. Then we put a laser in here and made sure that everything is correct, and that the drive shaft is going to be straight down the center of the hull, and that the engine is centered on everything. So it looks good. So we're ready to go ahead and glue in the bottom block first, and then once it's set, we'll actually recheck everything one more time before we epoxy the top block onto the bottom block. Okay, it's time to glue in our first 2 blocks finally. And I know this looks like a lot of marks here, but we have specific ones with arrows on them that go, and this has all been cleaned up and ready to roll. So down we go. Okay, glued in. Checking all the marks. So we have marks all the way around the whole thing, so it's right in the correct position. we're going to let this set up and put the top piece on once it's set up. We're getting ready to put the second set of blocks on top now that these are set up. So Brian's in here cleaning it off one more time, and because we dropped a little dust on things when we were putting up our, that's not shade, it's a UV covering for the top of our cabin top up there. So we've covered that all now so that it's not getting beat up by the sun, but that dropped a little bit of dust from those as we were doing it. So we're cleaning the tops here, and then of course the end of the foam over there where we're going to attach to as well. Okay, time to put on the top blocks. These have all been sanded, roughened up. So now we're just going to get us a nice thickened epoxy layer here. It's a little warmer than it was this morning when we did the first layer, well, the first block. And when we put this block that I'm doing the top of right now down, temperature was probably 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and now it's about 83, so a little warmer, and we've got to do a little bit more work, so we're using a little slower setting up epoxy here for this. This is Sycomen, where we use West System in the morning because we wanted it to set up in the morning so that we could do this in the afternoon. So it's all working out. So while I'm getting this on, Brian's already over there mixing up the next one. We got to get these both on quickly because we also want to test them while they're still movable with the brackets from the Combi system. Now the alignment here is why we have to get both of these at once, because we're going to set the brackets on and let this settle it right to where it goes. So we'll get that next one on momentarily. Alright, so here comes Brian with second batch. It's only been about, maybe 3 minutes here. Okay, let's stick her on there. Heavy little beast. Let's get this on here before we get too far. Okay, this is the tricky part. I will walk down the middle. So what we've done is we've already used the laser to get these in the proper position. Then we marked on here where this piece lines up and where this piece lines up. And if those both line up with these on here, it's going to be in the right spot. But we're going to do one more check. Oh, things we have to check now. We have to make sure that these are the right distance apart, which they are, and that these two are the right distance apart. That's correct. And that one's on its mark. So, we're done. We just want to make sure that the weight of the other end of this Combi bracket isn't lifting this, so we're going to leave these bricks on here to make sure, because this has some weight to it. But that looks like it's all straight, the right distance apart, center line checked, good to go. Now if I can get out of here without touching anything, it'd be wonderful. Our diesel motor mount is in and gluing now. So we're pretty happy with the way it aligned and everything. So the engine should fit right on there perfectly and be straight down the center of the hull for the prop shaft. Took a lot of measurements and a lot of tweaking to make sure that we got that right. But it all looks good now, and the next part will be glassing, tabbing it partly to the hull with some coves and tabbing, and then we're going to have to build a floor that goes on either side of it, and we're going to start that floor tomorrow. Once the floor is in, the floor is made out of foam. It goes on the outboard side of both of these, and it goes all the way over here. Once that floor is in, then we can glass down the hull, across the motor mounts, down the wood, and back onto the hull again. So major glassing of the top of all this stuff. So it'll be incredibly strong at that point. And it's nice to see this in here, because I can see already that the, as we checked it, but I can see that the place where the magnetic decoupler goes is the right height off the bottom of the boat. So we got all the measurements correct. It all looks perfect. So we're ready to go for the next phase. Let me show you something else that we did while we were waiting for this to set up. Hang on a sec. So while we were waiting for the epoxy to set up on the first set of blocks, we went and put some tarps up on top of the roof, because that just gets beat on by the sun all the time. We want to give it a little bit of UV protection up there. We'll cover other parts as we go here, but that's a start, because that takes the most of the heat. So covered that today. So with our motor mount blocks glued in, the next thing we're working on is building the foam that's going to go on this side and on the far side over there. And so we made marks along the hull here every so far, and the same spots along the beam here. And we're transferring those measurements onto a template, which is just going to be a piece of cardboard here. So we transferred those same marks and then the same measurements between the marks, and that gives us our curve through here. Now, we don't think it's right. That's why we're doing it in cardboard. So we'll cut this one out, go test it. If it's wrong, we'll adjust and cut another piece of cardboard.
Okay, we'll test here. So this is inside 3. Inside 3
goes right
there.
And outside 3 goes right there. So Brian's over making a slight adjustment on one of them, and we had to take a little bit more off the curve on the bottom. So he's using a grinder to take that off. And then the rest of them are in, not glued in, but they fit. And so we're capping the ends like this with it, because this is stronger. We'll just bevel this. And then the one he's working on goes in the middle right there. And then this steps down, because there's a floor piece that goes in there that just makes a nice flat area to walk on when you're servicing the engine. So, okay, looks good. That last little adjustment makes that fit in there very nicely now. So these are ready to glue in. So Brian's mixing up some thickened epoxy, and so we're going to glue those down, 3 on each side. And tomorrow we'll get to work on putting the tops onto them and glassing it all together. I got it. All right, let's start over here. So they're glued. What's really been hard about this particular job, as Brian pointed out to me a few minutes ago, so far between the wood and the brackets and the foam, I'm not even going to count templates, but the actual pieces that we put in here, so far we've cut 55 custom pieces. And we sure wish this was like a kit boat, where all the parts were pre-cut. Little joke there. We still have, over 500 pre-cut pieces that are cut that will be glassing together into the furniture of the boat and those kinds of things. But, whenever we get to something like this, it's all custom curves that we have to cut and stuff. It just takes a lot of time to do that. And this is why I'm glad we're not building a from scratch pile of wood boat where you have to cut everything. At least there are 600 or so pieces of this boat that are pre-cut, and for that we're happy. For example, when we were doing the webs up at the bow, or the webs along the bench in the stern in the last couple episodes for this, that went really quickly because those were all pre-cut and it just glues together really nice. But then things slow down when we do a custom job like these motor mounts. Now I understand that this isn't Schoenig's fault. The fact is that you can't, certain things you can't pre-cut because they don't know which engine we're going to use. In fact, the other 1520 that I know of being built right this minute used a completely different engine, different motor mounts, different height of engines, different angles, all different than ours. And there's no way for Schoenig to have pre-cut everything when this is an option for the builder as to which engines that they're going to use. And in our case, full hybrid system using a Nanny diesel and a Combi hybrid 25 kilowatt, where the other boat I was talking about using a Yanmar, and they're using I think it's either a 15 or 18 kilowatt electric motor. So it's similar, but literally different. For example, with theirs, but just because of the nature of how theirs is laid out, the electric motor is further back than ours. Therefore, they had to put 6 motor mounts in, where because ours is so close, we only had to go with 4 motor mounts. So it's different. So again, this is nothing to do with Schoenig. They're doing what they should do. It's just, we've just noticed that whenever we get to these super custom things, it just takes a lot longer to do. But we're getting close. We've got the template cut out of wood for the top piece, so all we have to do is use that to trace a line around on the foam and cut the foam out and set it down, and we'll glue those in. Before we can do that, though, we have to come in here and tab these down. These are just glued right now, so we'll tab them all and get this whole thing all tabbed in. Then we have to create dummy coves on top, and then we can glue down the final pieces, and this will almost be done. The other thing we have to do is bilge paint the inside of this. It'll be the first paint we do on the boat, but we have to do it because if we put the diesel engine in here, it'd be damn near impossible, or at least really annoying, to get underneath of that engine to try to put bilge paint. It's time to tab in these pieces. We've got them glued yesterday, and so we're going to put coves and tab the insides of these. I'm not going to go to the top yet. We just want to get these outer ones tabbed, because then we'll lay the actual floor in, come down off of here, down the side, and down to the middle. So right now we just want to cove the inside, and because these are going to be completely hidden from view at all times, once we put this floor on, never getting in here again. So we're not going to use, we don't need to use peel ply inside of here. We're just going to glass it, and that's it, because again, we'll never be in there. So we're just going to do this side here on the outboard side first, and then we'll remix and do the inboard side over here. There we go. Just in time. A little hot. Warm day today. And even though we're using the slow thickener, it's just a warm day. So
Gets off pretty quickly.
We've gotten the foam piece out of our offcuts for the step that goes on either side of the outboard right now. I'm getting ready to put these floors in, like the one over here. But before we can do that, we have to put dummy coves up on top. So we created this little piece of wood, cut out the holes, taped plastic tape on the inside, and we can put the coves up underneath of here. Once it's set up, we can peel this off and then glass this other board onto those dummy coves there. So that's what we're up to right now. We've got the dummy coves in on the plywood, so it's all set. That will set up, and tomorrow we'll peel off that wood, clean it up as we need to a little bit, and then we'll glue down the actual foam floors. It's taking a little longer than we thought to get this done, but then again, there was a lot of custom work to get this done the way we wanted to do it and everything, and no pre-made pieces, so everything had to be, and everything on a curve and on an angle, so it was a lot of work, but it's going to be nice, and our engine is going to take us a long ways on our trip around the world, so it's worth the effort. Getting ready to pull the dummy forms off. They've had a chance to set up now. Got to take out a couple screws. We're holding them in. We'll see how stuck these are. Hopefully not too bad. There we go. Dummy coves. Don't need that anymore. Thank you. A bit ugly, but they'll do the job, and once we seal these up, you'll never see this again. First things first though, after this, next thing we need to do is remove the motor mounts, because we're going to be glassing right over the top of all this stuff. There's a little bit on the inside we have to seal up first, and then we'll put down our floors with glue, and then we'll glass this in. So that's the plan. So next thing up, I'm going to get a socket and start taking these motor mounts off. Okay. Yeah, find me some bricks. They're around. You just have to kind of hunt for them. There's one. Okay, now just a little cleanup here. Okay, so we're here at the end of the week and getting to sit down on our construction from the week, but we made a lot of progress and it was a lot of work, as I've mentioned, but we're happy with how this came out.
Yeah, we got the motor mounts and walkway glued and tabbed in. Didn't quite finish the glassing on it because we had a bit of a heat wave starting, so we had some problems with epoxy and the temperature. So we'll get to that first thing next week.
Right, it got into the mid-90s by 11 a.m. yesterday. In fact, it's in the 90s right this second on the next day. And it's going to cool during the week a little bit next week, so that's good. We can get back to more epoxy work. But we just had to cut off because there's no way a large lamination job could happen in that kind of heat, so we just couldn't do it. But we do thank you for watching this week's video and appreciate you spending some time with us. And thank you to our patrons as well for supporting our project. We appreciate them.
Yes, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
And we'll see you next week to finish these off, but that's not all we're doing next week. Obviously, we're going to lower the engine in here for sure. It's just about ready to go. Before we do that, though, we're going to put bilge paint in on here as well. And we are going to start working on the bridge deck, guaranteed. So we'll see you next week for that.
Bye.
Bye.